No.
Come on, lessons learned. Don't make me do it again.
Record here too.
Good. There's that.
Yeah.
No, not a mistake you could have made, just mine.
Oh, I see.
So
We don't talk about it then.
No, we live streamed an episode of the podcast, and it turned out that the people watching the live stream could hear Jason and I just fine, but the audio from the guest that we were talking to was completely silent.
Oh no!
Zero audio. And it was 11 minutes in by the time I got it fixed. So that was pretty rough.
And so we caught it, and someone commented that they couldn't hear Trevor, and they were able to kind of circle the wagons and get it sorted out. But it was an embarrassing moment for Mary.
Whatever.
And it was definitely going to be covered in her performance improvement plan moving forward.
Jason was like, "Oh, you made the mistake," and I was like, "How much of the live stream could you have pulled off without me, though? Because it probably would have been 0 video and 0 audio." So, do you have one of these on or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can hear we have audio from the Zoom as well as our audio is making it to the live stream.
It's all making it.
It's all making it. So we are now live streaming.
Hi, everybody.
Did you post on LinkedIn to let people know they could watch the live stream?
I did.
I suppose in some ways live streaming is a little counterintuitive, though, because then if people are there, it means they're there instead of being here.
It's true. But so the way that I presented it is that if you just want to have what is it? What is it called? Fly on the wall view, right? If you just want to like watch from a distance.
Like a preview.
No, not even a preview, but if you just want to watch without really participating or being in the live stream, then you can just go to the YouTube link. But if you want to participate in chat, conversation, what have you, then you got to sign up. Yeah.
Come and hang out.
Taylor, you all ready to go?
The silence was deafening.
I sent him anytime that we see typos in the world, I'll like send a private message.
Right.
So maybe he's correcting that.
He's busy correcting typos.
That's right.
I know I always give you the typo corrections.
Oh, yeah. So apparently, he's multitasking. So apparently you never pluralize with an apostrophe, no matter how many times I try.
It's true. You will never make a word plural by using an apostrophe.
You have a chat question.
That's right. That's right. So we have a question from Cynthia. So good to see you, Cynthia.
Yeah. Can't stay for the whole presentation. Will it be available for viewing at a later time? So this is actually the first time that we are live streaming this to YouTube. And that live stream link that's all over LinkedIn, and Jason will post it again after this is over, I'm sure. It will still be at that link, and you'll be able to come back and watch it later at any time on the YouTube channel.
So you could watch it right now.
You could watch it live right now, but also later you could watch it tomorrow.
I think there's like a 10-second delay or something.
Yeah, it'll be unavailable for like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Is Wendy joining us today?
I know she said she was planning to.
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
I know she wanted to, but I also know she is busy these days.
Got it. So we have folks coming in.
Yeah, we got some people watching the live stream.
It's good stuff.
Hello, YouTube.
All right. We all ready to go?
I think we are if you are.
All right. Got to take this off. This is way too distracting.
Oh, yeah.
It's working, though.
The live stream is at like a 1 minute delay. So if you put the headphones on, you hear us from 1 minute ago as you're trying to do your thing now, which is a lot.
All
It is
right.
a lot.
It is a lot. So ready to get started.
Let's go.
Welcome to Builder Chat, everybody. We appreciate you making the time to come out. Today we're going to be talking about suicide awareness and psychological safety in the construction industry. We have special guest Kabri Lehrman-Schmid. And please let me know, is that the correct pronunciation?
Oh, you got it. You got it.
I've
great.
had a lot of practice here recently. Like we've been in each other's orbits a bit.
And this is the first time that we are doing Builder Chat live, so we're live streaming this to YouTube, so you guys know that that is happening.
Yeah. So don't share what you're going to be buying for your spouse if they are going to watch this later for their birthday.
Yeah, don't put your credit card numbers
Yeah,
up.
don't share that. That's okay. So we ask that everybody share your video, if at all possible. And we, especially going through COVID, it's good seeing other faces in the world. We've got a couple new faces here, but just some brief introduction about what it is that Builder Chat is. It's a construction-focused peer group where we try to share new ideas and ask questions, make suggestions to one another, and just kind of generally have a forum for discussion. So it's brought to you by ABC Western Washington. We're super excited to have this conversation today. So where do we want to get started? Do we have any general housekeeping notes?
Other than the live stream and the fact that you can watch this video later, if you just go to the same link that we've been putting out there for the live stream.
Yeah. So we
Do
have
you have any news from ABC?
Janessa, do you know if we have any news from ABC? I know we have announcements after.
Usually we can make Jared do
What
it.
I would have.
Janessa, you're it.
The upcoming events.
Yeah, so we'll do those after, absolutely. Okay, and we have a couple of new faces here. Anita, it's good to see you. Your hair's looking sharp today. Man. Mohsen, is that your name? Yeah, there we go. So if you could just give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
I'm Miriam Sinyan. So my dad is Mohsen.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm here on behalf of Mode Trucking. We're a transportation company, an intermodal company, and we transport containers anywhere in the U.S.
Got it. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, and you can feel
Thank
free
you.
to change your dad's name. He won't mind, I'm sure.
You can change it back when you're done.
We have Joe Kopko. Joe, that's a new face.
Is this Joe from
How are you guys?
Doing all right. Are you from Hub?
Good. Yes, I'm from Hub. I'm based out of the Pittsburgh region. Background in safety management, safety engineering, and risk management. And I lead our construction focus and support our ABC chapter in Western Pennsylvania.
Great. I appreciate you being here.
Nice to meet you, Joe.
We have Rochelle.
Thanks for having me.
Rochelle K. If you could give a brief introduction, I'd appreciate it. Rochelle, are you here with us?
We may have some audio issues.
Yeah. Nick.
Hi, Nick. Good to see you.
So anybody else who who wants to introduce themselves, we recognize everybody else here. If you have any news that you want to share, go ahead and use the thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no buttons, and we will be sure to call on you. So I think it's about time that we get started on our topic with Kabri. And I think kind of to kick off the conversation, it's important to note that suicide in construction, in the construction industry, is actually a gigantic sleeping problem in our industry that many folks don't even talk about. And I think the biggest barrier to that is that we don't even necessarily know that it's a problem. So Kabri and I went back and forth. I had posted on LinkedIn that as far as industries go, I said suicide in construction, construction has the third highest rate of suicide of any industry. And Kabri said, can you check your reference there? Because I don't think that's quite right.
No, I was trying to make sure I wasn't wrong because I was pretty sure it was wrong, but I didn't want to call it out.
No, I welcome anybody. Call me out if I'm wrong, please.
It's how we all make sure we're more right.
And Kabri, you were deft at calling me out on that. It was just very proper and very appropriate, but very pointed. Like, check your facts, bud. And I went back and checked my facts, and you're right that suicide in construction has the second highest incidence of suicide of all industries, next to mining.
Yep.
Right, next to mining. So think about that. You're underground all day, working in extreme conditions, And that's the only other industry that has a more severe problem than you do. So Kabri, do you want to get us kicked off here? I know you have a little bit of information to share. Where do you want to get started?
Sure. So bit of an introduction. I'm Kabri. I'm a superintendent for a large general contractor and building services provider, Hensel Phelps. I am currently working at SeaTac Airport. I've been here for about 4 years, and I have a job site that has about 300 skilled tradespeople on it right now. So this is a topic. Suicide prevention has been a passion of mine for a few years now. It really was born out of a focus on how I like to treat and take care of the people on my job sites. And I had different efforts towards how do we overcome bias on the job site? How do we bring awareness to mental health and the benefit that came from my approach of creating relationships with people? And I was lucky to be introduced to a task force that we have here in Washington, of which I'm now a co-chair, which addresses suicide and the industry's problem with suicide. Like you mentioned, that we have the second highest rate of suicide in the nation as an industry, which if you add in AEC, if you add in the architecture and engineering side, we become number one. So this is a problem that most people don't know about. And when I learned about it a few years ago, I was just stunned, because I felt that a lot of the efforts I was trying to take with my own projects and what we were trying to do as a company, and many companies are trying to gear towards now, of really helping a whole person, this topic was going to address the root problems. So like I mentioned, I'm co-chair of the Washington Suicide Prevention Task Force for Construction. We're working with UW, their Forefront Suicide Prevention Program, to try to create construction-specific tools so that those in our industry can bring real information right out into the field and make a difference. So as a superintendent, I'm trying to make something that is immediately on the ground useful and easy to implement.
So in construction, we're pretty data driven, right? We're always interested in dollars and cents and months and days and hours. What kind of base data do we have to understand kind of the gravity of how big a problem we're working with here?
Great question. Let's see if you can see my screen.
And I promise she didn't plant that one.
I was going there either way, so thanks for participating. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Let's see if I can advance my screen while I'm on here. Okay, so first, I want to ask a question. Can I do that? You guys use the chat box.
Yeah.
So familiarity with this topic. In the chat box, if you could tell me 1 to 5, is this your first time talking about suicide in construction? 5 being like, I am a passionate practitioner, and I would put myself at like a 4. So, I mean, awesome. If we got 5s in here, we're gonna have a great conversation. We're gonna have a great conversation either way. Let me know what it looks like for you.
I think that's good.
I'll say a 3.
You sent it to
Oh,
Rochelle.
no.
Sorry, Rochelle. Jason's.
Michelle, I
great.
sent you my cheat answer.
There we go.
3.
Now we share it with the group.
Perfect. We have a nice mix in here. That's great. This will be an awesome conversation. And then my next question, if I can get it to pop up, would be raise your hand or give me a 1 if you know somebody who's died by suicide. I'm sorry to see that. Well, thank you for being here and being brave to discuss this because you have insight into a topic that needs to be shared. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. Nationwide, here are the facts. We have almost 50,000 lives that were lost in 2018. And if you know, the CDC lags behind a little bit on accumulation of data. So we have 2018 facts here, and that a large portion of deaths by suicide are white men in their middle years. So that happens to be a strong demographic of construction, and it correlates to what the facts show for all industries. Now, we mentioned earlier that construction has the second highest rate of suicide by industry, second to mining and extraction. And this is a problem that very few people know about. And When I speak about this here in Washington, I like to give Washington-specific facts, and this applies wherever you are because it at least breaks down the gravity to a specific location. And in Washington, here we go. So in 2018, Washington State lost 6 lives to on-the-job injuries for construction. So this is where all of our energy goes every day, preventing physical harm and injury and planning our work.
So these are lives lost that happen on the job site from the electrocutions, falls from, caught between, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is just kind of an eye-opening comparison, because if you think about the number of dollars that go into protecting those 6 lives, protecting the loss of those 6 lives, and then you compare it to this number.
Yeah, 125 lives were lost to suicide in construction in 2018 in the state of Washington. And you can see off to that right-hand side, I have a card that I had created for Safety Week last year. And at the time, the number was 77, but they have since amended that number to almost double at 125. So that's a significant amount of people that are being impacted by lack of similar policies or an understanding of what we can do as employers, as coworkers, as industry cohorts to address a topic addressing mental health. The other statistic I wanted to point out on this slide is the one in the upper left. 78% of all firearm deaths in Washington state are death by suicide. So that was just something that I had no understanding of just because of media, because of my understanding. But that's a significant percentage that plays into what we would teach or how we would address the problem within this industry. So I wanted to do a little bit of brainstorming, if that works for everybody, because I think that we should consider how we need to address this within the industry. And my first question for everybody would be is, why construction? So use the chat box, shout it out. I'm gonna take some notes, but why construction when, oh no, don't look.
and bonus points.
I'm trying to navigate. Okay, let's see.
Yeah.
So
Bonus
why
points if you tell us
construction?
out loud instead of in the chat.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it's and feel free to raise your hand or just share out loud. But what is it about construction that's different that could be a leading indicator or a cause for why this is the case? So Joe,
Hand up from Joe.
what do you got, Joe?
You know, and that's a great question. And I think that when you look at the issue, you know, any of these people who are in construction could easily be a car salesman or, you know, an engineer had they chosen a different path. But when you look at that construction environment, if I'm a manufacturing worker, every day my life goes to essentially the same place. I see the same people. I build camaraderie and peer relationships with someone that when I begin to be off, someone may take notice. But often in construction, we're working at 3 different jobs in a week. We're on one, we're on another one, then we're off, we're laid off for a month. And we don't get a lot of the consistency with our peers and the people close enough to us, our managers, for them to be able to monitor some of the ups and downs and be able to tell when someone's in need. Yes. And then on top of that, we've just taken an approach in construction where it almost becomes, for lack of a better term, a pissing contest, where when someone, if they did have the courage to say, man, I'm really having a hard time and I'm contemplating something crazy. In this environment, too many times it's, well, you think your life's bad, listen to this. And it becomes this measurement about who has it worse. And rather than get around the issue and bond together and say, my God, that sucks for you. And how can I support you? How can we support each other? We tend to just deflect the issue and make it about that bravado of who's got it worse and the suck it up mentality that comes along with this.
Yeah. So then point 1 then is that we're disconnected in construction or isolated. And then part 2 then is, I like that phrase, the suck it up mentality.
So Audrey, did you have input on that?
I also think that mental health is not something that's discussed, particularly among men, which construction is a high predominance of men. Nobody wants to appear weak. People will ask if you broke your leg, how you're doing. Can I help you up the stairs? But if somebody says they're depressed, most people back away. It's TMI. They don't want to. They don't want to ask about suicide, because if they do, then they have to act on it, and it's scary. So if we avoid it and we don't ask about it, then we don't have to deal with it. I also think there's a very high incidence of drug and alcohol abuse in the construction industry, which is a very strong precursor to injuries. To suicidal ideation. There's also a high predominance of military vets that already have PTSD, and they have a lot of access to weapons, which can be obviously a very high use for suicide. And I also think that when people have painful injuries, they get depressed, or if they've been off work and they've laid off and they don't feel productive, that also leads to depression. So there's just multiple factors, I think, in this industry.
Well, and I think another interesting part of this is I absolutely agree that people in construction are less likely to seek help to begin with. But even when they do start to seek help, there are these hotlines and such that are available kind of whenever, but the hours that construction people work can make it really difficult. If I said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make an appointment with someone, to get it outside of my work hours becomes really hard. If I'm working until late at night, I'm maybe working on the weekends even, like finding an hour that I'm available and that provider is available can be hard to do.
So I would
Where you're choosing between being paid or, letting somebody know that you are struggling with something.
Yep. Well, and then you have to tell your supervisor why you're not available.
Yeah. So. Jeffrey says, afraid to appear weak in front of your peers. That's absolutely true, related to the suck it up topic.
It's kind of a machismo in construction.
And I would think there are two other points that I would think of. One is that it's a high stress environment that oftentimes doesn't include a lot of process or order. Many times folks manage through chaos, and that chaos kind of bleeds into your life. And the other piece that's just kind of the amplification of the suck it up mentality is that construction guy topic that we've talked about, where being a tough man means that you don't have feelings, and if you do have feelings, you don't talk about it, right? We don't have time for that. So I think creating that space for conversation is kind of key, but I'm jumping the gun. G
we have
is
anybody
deadline
else?
driven.
Everything is deadline driven, is what
Yes.
Jeffrey said. Wendy says individuals are put in positions that are stressful for them, but they don't want to say anything.
Yeah, so promotion of, a good example would be promotion of productive workers to foreperson without training beyond, oh, you're really good at putting that work in place.
Yeah, that's promotion without preparation.
Well, and
as
Kim
you shared.
Go ahead.
I could not agree more with that promotion without preparation, because when you look at this is very much an issue where we need leadership. And I heard the word courage, and that's exactly what this is. And without preparing people for what they're supposed to work with, we look at construction as a man hour, a pieces and parts. We're going to need X number of this, and it's going to take us 30 hours to get it completed. And we tend to not look at that whole worker, and a person who does question or ask, I need something more, they are labeled as a whiner. So it really becomes this environment where there's a lot of unresolved conflict. There's a group of people that have little to no coping skills, and this band of management leadership that is right at the forefront that can observe and catch some of these things, and they're just so ill-equipped to do it.
That's great.
Yep. So Kim says that basically not wanting to talk about feelings or admit weakness is a male issue in general. Males are raised not to talk about feelings.
Yeah, we're socialized that way.
Yeah, and so that's referred to now. People are talking about it a lot and calling it toxic masculinity. And with construction being such a male-dominated industry, we have so many more men than women that it's definitely an issue. And I think I don't have any data on this, but I would guess that all of the industries that are the heaviest male-dominated industries, those would likely be the ones where you would see higher incidences of a lot of mental health issues.
So this is a great collection of ideas. From a personal experience, I worked night shift on and off for 3 years, and night shift as a salaried supervisor is a 24-hour shift, and lack of sleep is a big one. Seasonal work you know, the inconsistency of benefits and or pay. Those are also contributors to the risk factors of construction.
So Kim McFeely added that mental health isn't looked at as an illness, it's looked at as a weakness. And I think that's a fantastic point.
Yeah. We got to change that.
Yeah, thank you, Kim.
No, that's great. Okay, so with this collection of risk factors, I mean, why is it important to talk about this topic? I mean, what does it affect more than the people who are actually contributing to our industry? Any thoughts?
So your question is, why should we care about this for more than just the loss of life?
Well,
Yeah.
I think, and how can talking about it help? How can we move this forward?
So what do we think? Why does it matter? More than, of course, the loss of life is a terrible thing. But why does it matter beyond that? I'm going to start calling on people. Go ahead, Kabri.
I think there's a contagion factor. We know that oftentimes if one person kills themselves and another person is feeling suicidal, sometimes it can occur in multiples. We see that a lot in high school. I also think that it has a ripple effect. So not only is it the loss of life, it's the loss of pain for the family members and for those that have been working with that person. And so we do a lot of critical incident debriefings as our employee assistance program. And when somebody dies at work, it's very traumatic. So it affects productivity, it affects the accident rate, it affects time off, it impacts health insurance because people are taking time off because of depression. So it spans a much greater arc than just the individual who killed themselves, in my opinion.
Well, and
So I want to call on Cynthia, if you're okay, to answer this question, because I feel like you are a perfect person to share. What is a near miss in construction? What do you think, Cynthia?
Not sure she's available.
Okay. Oh, don't have your speaker on.
That's okay.
Okay. So a near miss is basically a record of when something almost happened. So it's a near miss or a near hit.
Yeah, there's actually a great George Carlin bit about that it's not actually a near miss. We didn't almost miss, we almost hit.
Yeah. But the idea is that we can actually record and take stock of our performance based on those near hit situations. So I think another component of this is these are just the recorded suicides, right? These aren't the people who are kind of mired or contemplating or in that dark state.
Who very seriously thought about it and then didn't end up losing their life to it, because those people never even make it into the statistics.
These are just the recorded statistics. And I think that there's a huge other thing going on there that's much bigger than just the recorded events. Joe, what did you have?
That's such a tremendous point to make, again, because we're working off of information of what we were able to actually capture, the ones that went through or, got to that point. But when you break it down, over 70% of the people who take their life by suicide openly talked about it. They had that suicide ideation. They discussed it. They made, comments. They gave away, personal belongings. And some of these people can't make heads or tails of what those actions are. And the more that we educate and inform and enlighten people about the characteristics of suicidal behavior and some of the warning signs, the more eyes we have on the problem, the better off we are. It's just like national security. It's just like workplace safety. See something, say something. And if people haven't been informed or haven't had it, presented to them in a way that is meaningful, they're not going to know what to do when that conversation happens to them.
Yeah. And so I have a question on that topic for Travis. If Travis, you could share, what does it mean, Travis, if people are kind of in that dark state and they're contemplating suicide? What does their work performance look like from a production standpoint?
It's very poor, I would imagine.
Yeah.
When you're in a dark state like that, there's just so many things that are you're running through so many different thoughts and trying to discover and figure out what to do. And so I think that work is going to be the last thing on your mind. So maybe a indicator for us as peers and supervisors is to watch for work performance. As we talked about, I think it's true. Most of us are very ignorant on trying to identify this. We don't have much experience with it. We're not sure how to handle it. And but we do know how to recognize poor performance. And I'm not saying that poor performance, ties right into this each and every time. But again, it may be an indicator that most of us would clue into a little bit faster than others.
I think that's
So
an
one of the
excellent point.
one of the topics that touches on, Travis, is the concept of presenteeism. So how present is a person performing a task? And the concept of psychological safety plays into how we're going to deal with prevention of suicide within construction, because in psychological safety, you're trying to create an environment on your team where everybody feels that they are comfortable enough to bring their whole person to work, that they're in a state of mind, that they're present and engaged and heard enough to have a voice where they can choose to make the safest decision, or they could choose to be more productive. And if people are being distracted or unsupported by something inside or outside of work, and you're seeing these outcomes of either in productivity or the words that they're saying, and up on the screen is a great poster from the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. Can you see that? It says
No.
recognizing.
So we just
signs
still have
to
the
speak up.
whiteboard.
We're still seeing the whiteboard.
We'll get there. We're patient.
I'm working
We're all
on it. Let's
learning,
see if
aren't
this
we,
works.
Mary?
Look.
How's this?
It's good.
You see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so when you're seeing different behaviors from people, I know that it was mentioned earlier, I think by Joe, how visiting different job sites, but often crews travel together, or you see these people every morning at toolbox talks or job site meetings, and you notice before others, because you spend so much time together at work, that something's off, especially as their direct management. So you might see some of these differences in behaviors, and it could be for many reasons about what's happening in their lives. And we need to figure out what we would do with the information of finding this out, because somebody mentioned before, your question, Jason, what would happen if somebody, was in this state of mind? I mean, there are statistics like the typical depressed person over the course of 3 months would miss 4.8 days of work and have 11.8 days of reduced productivity. Like in our industry, that's impactful. Not only because if a person isn't engaged, they're putting the entire crew at jeopardy of a physical injury, or not giving input, or not being able to better a situation, or speaking up against something unsafe on the job site. But you're also losing the benefit and value of that person as a part of your production.
Well, and you're 100% right in terms of folks who are in depressed states at work. They're much more likely to injure somebody else. So somebody going along, doing their own thing, being productive, and they're in a dangerous situation, and they have no idea that that's the case. But I think this is a little bit like being in touch with your kids. You need to be in touch with your workers to figure that out. And I think in construction, not enough companies measure productivity to be able to use that as a leading indicator to figure out if that's a problem. And of course, that shouldn't be the only way. But I think it brings up a really interesting another reason. If you needed another reason to measure workforce productivity, this is a great one.
I think people would be afraid to speak up because they don't want to misdiagnose someone and bring that type of attention to a coworker and it be something else. So really figuring out what the signs look like and make people feel comfortable with speaking up, and then also making sure that it's in a environment that's anonymous, because if you do bring that kind of attention to a supervisor and it is a misdiagnosis, it could be someone passed in their family or something else, and then you make it something that it isn't. I think that would be a reason why I wouldn't want to necessarily speak up by not knowing if that's the case, because if not, then you're adding an extra stress in that person's life. So this is a really complicated topic.
Well, and I do think that a good place to start is, what's going on? How are you? and you seem down lately. Anything you want to talk about? That you can lead with things that aren't necessarily that misdiagnosing. Although I do think it is important at some point in the conversation to ask the question directly, because if you don't, they might not feel like they can bring it up. But I know having a teenage daughter, it can be really scary to ask that question. When you notice that, I will say, I noticed you're not bouncing back. COVID is hard for teenagers. And I'll say, I noticed you're not bouncing back from this the way I would expect. Are you okay? Are you having thoughts about things that you want to bring to me? And that can be a scary conversation because you feel like if you say it, maybe it wasn't in their head before and it will be now. But the truth is, I think that anyone who had no intention of harming themselves, no suggestion of that is going to put them in that place. Whereas if they do have that thought, sometimes being asked that question can be like dangling a lifeline for them.
So I want to go to Kim McFeely. You had something to share?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Kim.
Okay. Hi. I also wanted to bring that up with Anita, saying she doesn't want to misdiagnose. And I think the issue here is we're not diagnosing anyone. We're just here to acknowledge the fact that, hey, are you okay? And a lot of times we don't ask that because we don't feel comfortable. Right? It isn't that person that you're asking is going to feel uncomfortable. It's that we have the stigma of not wanting to deal with someone saying to us, yeah, you know what? I feel like I want to kill myself.
Well, I think the error, if you could make a mistake in both ways, right? You see something where it doesn't exist, or you don't see something where it does. I would much more rather make the mistake of caring too much and putting my hand out and listening, as opposed, I would rather do that too much as opposed to never at all.
And just saying a little bit more on that topic, it's that we have to, not just in construction, but as a society, make mental health awareness a top thing, because it's killing people. And it's not just affecting the person that dies, it affects the company, it affects the family. People lose sons and husbands and fathers and wives and you name it.
Yeah.
And mental health is something that we have no money in it. So even the people who want to get help can't get it.
So I appreciate you sharing that, Kim. I want to go to Joe. What did you have, Joe?
Yeah, and the point about the diagnosis, and I think that's where everyone feels like they have to have an answer. They have to have an explanation of why and justify why they feel compelled to speak up and say something. And, we're constantly encouraging folks to say, forget the diagnosis. That's not what this is about. If you think about a person's mental health journey, it's like a really long relay race. And the person who passes that baton the first time is very unlikely to be the one who's going to cross the finish line with them. It's about that baton pass, that you don't need to say anything. You can escalate it up to your superintendent, to your human resources representative, even to the union steward. But it's about that courage that when you see something, it's the greatest extension of compassion and empathy that we could have in an organization, is to speak up enough because you care that person isn't the Joe that you know.
Yeah.
So I think that the challenge is before asking that question, and in order to address the fear that comes from what if this person says yes, or yes, I need help, is we need to figure out as organizations, as an industry, what our resources are and what we would do with that answer. And I think that depends on, what your organization is and can provide. There are national resources, like you had mentioned, Mary, with call numbers, but what do you have as a company as a resource? Do you have certain healthcare? Do you have a union that you can call into some resources that they have? We have a gazillion physical safety protocols on our job site. Are any of those being used, or could they be used to help with mental health? Sure, my crisis management plan should have a prevention and postvention response for somebody who is having concerns about suicide, or if we get a report of it? Why doesn't it have it? I don't know, because I've only drafted a draft one and I haven't actually written one yet. We have research to do as an industry. What challenges do people see in that? What else could we be doing?
So your question is, what else could we be doing in terms of trying to address the problem? Is that right?
Yeah,
To
in
create
terms
those
of
resources.
awareness, or in terms of providing resources and helping to increase prevention of suicide.
And before we get into that, I just want to thank Jeffrey and Kim for sharing their stories in the chat. It's impactful, and we appreciate the trust. So what ideas, what thoughts do we have about initiatives or changes that we could make as an industry to change the outcome? Joe, did you have something?
I do, and I have a client in the Pittsburgh area, and over a 10-year period of time, they had 6 suicides of their employees, and each one of them hit them off guard until the 6th one, and that was where they recognized we saw signs, we saw there was things that we should have been doing all along, and we didn't go far enough to make sure that we could. So one of the things that they did was they worked with us as their broker, and we identified the right telehealth provider. We identified north, south, east, and west of their corporate headquarters locations where therapists had open appointments, including after hours times, as well as an open and broad invitation to every employee. If this is a mental health related concern and you need help, we will pay for it on company time for you to get that appointment if you can't get it made after hours. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, the culture of that organization opened up, and so many people came forward with the struggles that they were having, including a peer that they were worried about. And it just set the organization on the right path by just simply recognizing this is their responsibility to provide a solution. And people are not going to do it on their own. And as an employer, it was their responsibility to do more.
Thank you.
That's an excellent solution. Something that I know I suggest to people is partnering with mental health professionals, and to have, if you as a company had a mental health professional, a specific one, who were to come in.
They have a name.
Yeah, someone with a name. It's not just someone, it's Sarah, it's Jim. And instead of, or that they would come in maybe once a month and give different talks on minor issues. They could talk about time management or stress management or are you getting enough sleep, just little topics, but they're there on a regular basis so that the team starts to know who they are. Because I think something that happens in deep depression is that new people can be too much. The idea of going and making an appointment with a therapist that you've never seen before and you don't know who they are, that can be really intimidating. So if there's this person in your life that you know that is a provider of that kind of help, you can say, well, I'm not going to just open up the phone book. I'm not going to just call somebody. But I mean, I guess I could go make an appointment with Sarah. I guess I could make an appointment with Jim. And it's that person that is already a touch point in their life that then they're connected to someone that they could call for help.
I'll say that we're not there as a very large company in order, like in terms of providing that. But what we're doing right now and what everybody on this call can do right now is start to bring awareness. There are many immediately available tools, like the ones on the screen, for you to be able to start bringing awareness and to start overcoming that stigma of talking about mental health and suicide. Down in that lower area, that yellow hard hat icon, which is that Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. It's a website. I have the links on another slide here, but they have posters, they have toolbox talks, they have sticker graphics, things that can be used right now as a campaign to start to bring awareness. And the task force I mentioned that I'm on, we're trying to create construction specific training so that it can be immediately used and accessible to the industry, because this industry has specific needs that isn't just a general therapist coming in. It's understanding what we're looking for as management and then having a plan as an organization on what to do when we see that. So
Jeffrey had a question, and so do the best that you can with this one, Kabri. So he's asking if large companies like Hensel Phelps have folks on staff on salary to specifically provide support on mental health issues. I'm not sure if that's something you're aware of or not.
It's a great question. As our company, we only recently got HR. We are over 2,500 person company, and we now have one HR lead. We are all like HR ourselves. We all do our own hiring, etc. But that doesn't address your question. What it addresses is that we are still figuring out between, I've been going down this path with safety. Yeah. And I've been touching on legal, like what do we do in a situation where somebody needs help, and when do we or can we not fire people for a substance abuse? Do we have other avenues? So we are just figuring out how to categorize mental health through our health insurance, through how we do our safety trainings, through how we do our leadership trainings. And actually for Safety Week, which was pushed to September this year, National Safety Week, we are doing our first complete mental health website rollout that utilizes the EAP as part of our health insurance, which is kind of the side of our health insurance that allows for access for more mental health or life condition related advice and support and resources. So no, we didn't have dedicated people, and we are just organizing ourselves around addressing mental health, and I'm thrilled about it.
And I think Hensel Phelps is not alone in that, because like many things in the construction industry, many companies are late to the game. Late to the game in technology, adopting big change. If you think about many of the folks in construction, those people will oftentimes resist change until they can't anymore. And I think COVID has done a tremendous good thing for all of us in terms of pushing technology forward. But I think in terms of getting comfortable with uncomfortable discussions is another whole forefront that we really need to spend some time on. Joe?
Can I add a couple of things?
Audrey, go for it.
So I own an employee assistance program. And I think in answer to Jeff's question, I think that it's better to have an outside vendor rather than one individual, because that individual may not click with the employees and they may not feel comfortable with that person. And I think employees feel safer when it's not an employee of their own company. They're very reluctant to go to HR because if they disclose a weakness or a mental health issue or depression, they're going to fear they won't be promoted or they may lose their jobs. And so keeping a confidential resource outside of the employer is really, I think, the most helpful thing. So I really advocate that every company, no matter what their size, have an employee assistance program that is specifically trained with mental health counselors like myself who deal with this every day.
And I think the important part there, Audrey, is that whatever organization or resource you're using, that those are people with names and not just, well, you could go check into this if you want to.
Exactly. And so as a local EAP, we go on site and we provide these trainings and we give employees the opportunity to talk with us afterwards. And we give supervisors the opportunity to consult with us so that they see that we're real people. We're the ones that answer the phone. It's not an 800 service that's in a different state and doesn't know how to say Puyallup or Enumclaw. So I think that's a big deal for us and what we pride ourselves on is being local. But the other thing I wanted to mention when we're talking about what we can do, in that what we know about people who are suicidal is, someone else mentioned, it's a process. They don't wake up one morning and make a decision to kill themselves. They've been thinking about this for a long time, and it comes with a lot of ambivalence. And so sometimes it's a secret, it's shameful, it's embarrassing. And if we ask about it and we make it safe for them to discuss it, it helps them with that ambivalence. They don't really want to die. They want to end their emotional pain. And if we can give them a resource to help them end this pain, then they don't need to end their lives. And so asking about it gives them the safety that they know we're going to listen, we're not going to judge, and we're going to refer them to resources like you have here on the bottom of the screen to help. So no person, coworker or employer or HR manager has to save someone's life. They just have to send them to the right resource. And I'm done with my preach.
Yeah, that's great.
That's good.
So keep in mind, though, that just like the near miss, near hit discussion, this is the worst case scenario. This is like the worst eventuality that we're focused on. Never mind whether or not we're bringing our whole selves to work. Never mind whether or not we feel comfortable actually being who we are and comfortable in our own skin. Never mind all of that, right? I think that by addressing the core issue of creating that feeling of safety and security in your workplace. This is not just a physical safety, but these are my people's safety that is really kind of at the core of the problem. I want to go to Joe. Joe, what did you have?
You know, Audrey, I'm giving you this big virtual hug because what you said was just so on point. And, you know, the EAP really needs to be this strategic tool. And so many employers it's the last line item on their employee benefits spend, and they give very little thought about it. 97% of employers purchase them, but there's less than 5% utilization. So, you know, while EAPs are widely available, there's a big disconnect with the worker. And I task every single construction company and every single construction management, individual to do this one thing. You can go to almost any craft personnel and say, what number do you call to call off? And where would you find out if your paycheck was wrong? Who would you contact? They all know those, but they don't know their own employee assistance plan phone number, and they certainly don't know the suicide prevention hotline.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I want to point out one more thing, and I want to go back to you, Kabri. I'll keep it short. If we think about where we're at with COVID, and we think about all of the layoffs that are happening, and the people who are in the greatest need of having this resource, it's the folks that are out of work. It's the folks that are laid off or temporarily, put on furlough or fired. Those are the people who are in greatest need of the resource. So I'm looking for thoughts or input on how we could make sure that those folks, even if they're not salaried employees or hourly workers, get access to, I know EAPs are very financially conscious, and they're not super expensive. How can we provide those benefits to people even if they're not on the clock? Kabri, do you have thoughts?
Go ahead, Joe.
I do. I do, because this is an arena where we deploy strategic resources and try to find ways for this. And one of the points at separation of a company, we go through the COBRA, the unemployment, but we never really get a baseline on how that person's going to be. And one of the things that we're encouraging employers to offer is this bridge program, this extension of some of the mental health support, whether it's a texting hotline or the availability of some virtual therapy. So they have that safety net, that lifeline as they're losing their job, to be able to still be able to, take care of themselves and weather what's going on, rather than just this harsh pulling of the plug.
Well, and I think
that's a great idea.
That's an awesome point. So we've actually been spending a lot of time helping out-of-work folks brush up their resume, dial in their LinkedIn profile, really think about what they want to be when they grow up if they're between jobs. And I think that having that continued mental health support, it should be a given. And I think even if we don't have access to a formal program, just knowing that there are other people out there who are willing to talk just as people, I think that goes a long way. Kabri?
Yeah, I wanted to see if anybody else had thoughts before I started talking again.
Yeah. So do we have any other thoughts before we wrap this thing up? Because we're about out of time. It just flew. Have any thoughts, input, questions for Kabri or anybody else?
Yeah, this is Jeff Pulliam.
Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Good to hear from you,
So
Jeff.
I'll let Kabri go here. I just wanted to say, I know I kind of picked on Kabri's company here a second ago, just as to make a point. But I do want to say this about Hensel Phelps, is that and Kabri probably knows a number of their people who work in their estimating department. Hensel Phelps is, of all the companies that I've worked with here since I've been instructing at Renton Technical College, has been the most personable, most, outfit or company that really considers and takes strongly the human element. And I get that when I've worked with a number of individuals, Kabri, and I get that sense not listening to Kabri, but with a number of individuals that I've worked with at Hensel Phelps. So I just wanted to say that as a shout out, that HP is one of the construction companies in this country that really is on the forefront of many things. I think more so than a lot of their competition. So I just wanted to make sure I gave a shout out there.
Well, and Kabri brought up that they're still at the beginning of the process. Right?
We are.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing that that's our intent. We have a long way to go on many fronts. I did want to kind of make sure people understood the resources that are immediately available. these are some resources and we can get them out to everybody. I mentioned the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. You have toolbox talks there, you have posters, you have additional information, including a really great checklist on how to start to assess your policies and what you offer for resources for people. ABC has a great page already on the website that also includes like COVID anxiety resources, because I find that it's been a lot more acceptable to talk about mental health in the last few months with people on the job site, because everybody's struggling with something, and it's really a common experience to share what those challenges are. So that's been great for the awareness of this topic.
Yeah, I think the point that you made about COVID being a good opportunity for a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, it's been great for moving technology. It's been great for discussing equality and those sorts of things, but also mental health is kind of right at the forefront. Public education, I mean, all of these great things that we're discussing as a people.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the way that we should, and now we have no choice.
Yes. For Rise Up, that's it's a pre-apprenticeship program out here in the Seattle area. Rise Up is an initiative that they've been working on that really address specifically different issues of bias. Culture of Care, similarly, I'll get to you in a second, Joe. Culture of Care similarly has resources where you're trying to create a respectful work site. We specifically created resources for July was BIPOC and Minority Mental Health Month. So we put those in all the porta-johns on the job site with QR codes, as well as LGBTQ mental health resources. So both of those programs, Rise Up and Culture of Care, have already published resources that you can take to Toolbox Talks and right down to the crew level. And finally, the Forefront Suicide Prevention Program. We had mentioned earlier how to approach somebody with the question. And Audrey, when you talk about empathy and the approach to that, I just hosted our first trial webinar about their LEARN method, which is how to speak to somebody about their mental health and to ask about suicide and prepare the resources for if you got that yes answer. So we also have that resource that's been recorded if those are interested.
That's great. I really
Joe?
appreciate that. Joe, what did you have?
One last thing I wanted to add, through the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention, they're offering a supervisory, organizational training with a program called Living Works.
Yes.
And I believe it's complimentary through the end of September.
Yes,
And
thank you.
at the end, and then September 29th, Hub is going to be hosting an employer's webinar on suicide in construction. And we're going to be talking about, the steps that employers can take, including some of those bridge programs with, the variations of the crafted EAPs, different text hotlines or, text therapy approaches. And then during the Suicide Prevention Week, September 6th, we're going to be hosting a number of stand downs across the country to try to get organizations to take a moment and have every single employee pull their phone out and put the suicide prevention hotline and the text crisis hotline in their phone so we can just increase access to that number.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a great point, just in terms of adding the contact. That's perfect. So do we have any other last minute questions? We have a couple of announcements to get through. Any other questions, comments, anything else that folks want to share or ask about? Sounds good.
Really appreciate the topic.
You appreciate the topic, Nick?
Yeah.
You need that
Really
on the Millennium Falcon? Is that helpful?
Yep. Very stressful environment.
That's right.
It is.
True.
Love it.
Space is the highest stress environment.
And the warp never works, right? Jump speed or light speed. Anyway, so I want to put a couple of announcements out there. Just stick around. We're almost done. I know that I got a note that Cal Beyer of Construction Industry Alliance is hosting, I think it's a webinar tomorrow. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you go on to Construction Industry Alliance, I'm sure you'll be able to find info about registering for that webinar if you have interest in joining. We have a couple other items for ABC. I know that ABC Human Resource Roundtable is coming up on Thursday, August 27th. So you could find info about that on ABC's website. And then we also have a safety roundtable coming up. It's called New Unified Fall Protection Code. So if you're thinking about physical safety, this topic's for you. That's on September 2nd. So we really appreciate everybody making the time today. Kabri, we really appreciate having you here. Do you have any final words to close out?
Thank you for the opportunity and for furthering this discussion. I'm in no way a professional about this. I am literally jumping back out to the airport to do my day job. So everybody here can play a role in that awareness. Joe, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those links before you go in the chat, that would be helpful, I think, to us.
And whatever links get shared in the chat, ABC's been really good about making sure that those resources make it back in some way, shape, or form to ABC's site. Yeah. So you can also find that stuff at some point there, I'm sure.
So if you have the ability to share your screen, we ask that you do. And we ask everybody to unmute if you have the ability to unmute. Just for a moment here, there he is. Jeff, I love the beard. And I just love selfishly to see everybody's face.
It's so nice to see some faces.
It really is. Anybody else that has the ability to share, feel free to do it. Yeah. Travis, so Travis was the one who put us up to starting Builder Chat months ago now. And so Travis, I'd ask that you get us out of here.
Happy to do so, Jason. Thanks again, Kabri and Audrey and Joe, for your guys' wisdom on today's subject. Such a valuable subject to be talking about and to bring awareness. RK, Jason, and Mary, thank you for organizing all of us. Builder Chat is a great platform, and so be able to have super topics like this to help most of us who are very unaware is just such a blessing. So thank you for that. So because together we came together as a group, as a team, we want to kind of leave that way. So we like to break this thing like a football team breaks a huddle. So you guys have all seen it, where you raise your hands and I'll say, get ready, break, and we all just come together. And, virtually it's not always perfect timing, but it's still a beautiful thing. Okay, so hands up. Hands up, hands up. Even the screens I can't see, I hope your hands are up.
We know whether or not you're doing it.
No video.
All right. Thanks a lot, team. Ready?
Break.
All right.
Good to see everybody. Take care.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.